Realme is a brand which we've only recently started covering here on Tech Travel Geeks. It's a smartphone brand which is part of BKK Group, and our Chief Aperture Officer Lukasz recently reviewed the Realme 8 Pro, which was a phone that boasted a 108 megapixel camera, but that ultimately, in terms of day-to-day performance, wasn't anything that we could shout out about too much. In this video, we'll be reviewing the Realme GT Neo2, a smartphone which sits just under the flagship position, but offers you an amazing value proposition. The Realme GT Neo2 is a truly great smartphone as an all-rounder. The lovely screen is an AMOLED one or an OLED one, which offers HDR10+ and gives you really nice saturated colours and deep blacks. The screen was a pleasure to use over the month or so that I've been using this as my secondary smartphone. And it has a dock in the top left of the screen where you'll find the selfie camera. When watching media, that lovely screen is very, very good, as in it has performed very well. I have a feeling though that the screen maybe lets down that fingerprint scanner on the GT Neo2, which is an in-display one. The in-display fingerprint scanner on the GT Neo2 is in the lower part of the screen, so it's a bit of a stretch sometimes to catch it when you're using the smartphone. When you do hit the sweet spot on the screen, it is a very responsive and secure fingerprint scanner. The only problem is it's not as reliable as such as a power button mounted one on the side of the device, even though the power button of the GT Neo2 is easily accessible and usable. Oddly, the button positioning on the GT Neo2 is slightly frustrating to me. You have the power button on the right-hand side and the volume rocker on the left-hand side, similar to what we've seen from its cousin brand OnePlus and the fruity iPhone 13 Pro. So you do have that usability issue. If you want to have all your buttons on one side of the smartphone, the GT Neo2 may not be the one for you. In terms of overall features, there's no infrared blaster on this device, as well as there being no headphone jack. Sound quality from the speakers is decent, great for watching video on YouTube or Netflix or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime. I had no issues installing or using any of those apps, unlike some other brands where sometimes you do lack some of the codecs to get full high definition plus video or higher. The bezels on the Realme GT Neo2 are relatively small thanks to the fact that it is an OLED screen that's there, and that gives you the overall feeling that this is a much more compact phone than it could be. The back of the phone is made out of glass and is surprisingly pleasantly curved to give you a really good ergonomic feel whilst you're using it. And the only thing that really stands out is a relatively large camera bump. That camera bump is metal encased and it has a really good set of cameras in it. The main sensor is a 64 megapixel one, that's your standard cropped one. And it also has an 8 megapixel wide angle sensor. And just to round it off, there's a wonderful sticker camera which I used a couple of times and then decided not to use, which is a 2 megapixel macro one. When it comes to camera performance, the 64 megapixel sensor on the back, paired with whatever lenses Realme managed to get out of the bucket, are really, really good. The overall colours are good, the high dynamic range is excellent, and the camera smarts from Realme UI, the Android distribution the Realme GT Neo2 runs on, make overall pleasant pictures which will be easy to share on social media. One thing to bear in mind, Realme UI, which is what the Realme GT Neo2 runs on, is actually very close to ColorOS, which we've seen on other smartphone brands, such as Oppo. So in terms of functionality, you'll have some similar performance when it comes to low-light pictures, and more importantly, the overall editing suite of applications in Realme UI is very similar to ColorOS. So that's actually a really good thing. You're getting very good value from the device in that category. Now, the wide-angle lens camera shots are slightly less pleasing to the eye. The colors are less saturated, but the overall quality is excellent, and it makes capturing a panorama very, very easy, even in slightly challenging conditions like sunsets. In terms of video recording, the Realme GT Neo2 records in 4K at 60 frames per second, but bear in mind there's no optical image stabilization on the main sensor, which means that you might have a little bit of extra shakiness. The Realme GT Neo2 is a great overall smartphone, and part of that is from the fact that it's running a not quite flagship class Snapdragon 870 chipset. This is an odd chipset in the overall Qualcomm product portfolio. It's not quite a Snapdragon 888, but it's almost there, and in terms of performance it does better than the Snapdragon 865 from last year. Bear in mind, the Realme GT Neo2 is a much more affordable smartphone than some other of its competitors, especially from the likes of Xiaomi. So when putting this side by side next to, for example, the Xiaomi 11T Pro 5G, you're getting very similar performance, but with a slight edge on price. The Realme GT Neo2 is slightly more affordable. In terms of performance, that Snapdragon 870, as I said, outperforms the previous Snapdragon 865 flagship chip, but isn't quite the Snapdragon 888. Most users won't notice the difference when playing games like Call of Duty Mobile or any other light games that they're playing on their smartphone. The only thing I would say is that maybe having a Snapdragon 870 in the chipset makes the battery life a little less efficient than it could be with maybe a 7 series chipset. But that's a product decision Realme made here. You are getting an almost flagship chipset, and when needed, for example for video editing or high-end gaming, it performs well. So the 5000 mAh battery in the Realme GT Neo2 is a decent one. It lasts me a full day of heavy use, though with some extended gaming sessions, for example in Call of Duty Mobile, it does suffer significantly. Topping up that 5000 mAh battery is very easy though. With 65 watt charging, you can get apparently close to 100% charge in less than 40 minutes. In my experience, a full charge using the included charger, or more importantly, one of my other chargers, was similar, though a little bit slower. The Realme GT 2 Neo is running Realme UI 2. This is very closely related to ColorOS from Oppo, and offers a decent selection of theming options and a few little extras you won't find in stock Android. Theming is consistent throughout the operating system, though there is a few extra apps that sometimes are considered as bloatware. Those apps are easily uninstallable though, so no big worry for me there. A very disappointing feature of the Realme GT Neo2 is Realme UI's lack of software updates. The Realme UI v2 version on a review device has an August 2021 software update in February 2022. So we're looking at almost 6 months of updates behind what Google and other brands such as Samsung offer. So bear that in mind. You may not get great support from Realme going forward if the initial trend is to anything to go by. So the Realme GT Neo2 review device that we have has 12 GB of RAM. That's an impressive amount of RAM, which maybe makes up for that difference between the Snapdragon 888 and the Snapdragon 870. There's also 256 GB of inbuilt storage. Just bear in mind there's no micro SD slot for expanding that, so make do with 256 GB, or make sure you've got a good streaming option through your mobile network or Wi-Fi provider. Overall, the device is great, good feel, decent cameras, decent battery life. I wouldn't say the battery life is great, despite that 5000 mAh battery and the fast charging Realme provide with the GT Neo2. It is a very good smartphone, but the battery life compared to its peers does seem to not do as well in my experience. If a good value smartphone, which is in around about the £400 price range, is something you're looking for, the Realme GT Neo2 is definitely a contender. One of the advantages is minor, but yet something I think is quite important. You have everything in the box to get going when you start. It has a charger, it has a case for your phone, which is a pleasant silicon TPU one, and everything else to get going, and overall provides a good experience. Whether that's up to scratch against its competition, such as the Xiaomi 11T Pro 5G, is up to you to decide. But for most users, in my view, especially when traveling, this is a compelling package that offers good overall battery life, decent performance, and above average camera performance. If you're looking for a device with a slightly better camera, I would say look elsewhere. Thanks for watching this review of the Realme GT Neo2 smartphone. If you have any questions or you would like to know more, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. If you'd like to see more content about smartphones, but also accessories and gadgets and anything we believe makes the travel experience better, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. For now, thanks for watching and goodbye from me.